All right, folks, it's just a little bit past 2 o'clock here Eastern Standard Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. My name is Jeff Yeagley. I am Senior Account Executive and Marketing for Compass IT Compliance, and I'll be today's moderator for our webinar. A couple quick housekeeping rules before we go ahead and get started and get into the presentation. Number one is I've muted folks' lines as they join to eliminate any type of background noise and prevent any distractions while Jerry's going through the presentation. Second thing is we will make a copy of the presentation as well as a recording of the webinar available to everyone who registered. So I will email that out to you all by tomorrow morning at the latest, and these will both also be posted over to our website and the recording to our YouTube channel as well. So a couple quick housekeeping things. Also, we will have some time at the end if you have any questions. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end. So in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, you should see a little chat box or a little chat icon. You can go ahead and click on that, and you can ask any questions that are in there. You can address them directly to myself, or you can put them to the group, and we, again, time permitting, will get those answered for you. So today's webinar is going to be on GDPR, which is getting a lot of press lately and a lot of traction out there in terms of what this is going to entail and what it means for organizations. So hopefully we can answer some of those questions for you today. So I'd like to introduce our presenter today is Jerry Hughes, who is one of our managing partners, VP of Operations, and Senior Executive IT Auditor here at Compass. Jerry has extensive experience in information technology, as well as helping companies become compliant with various industry, government, federal regulations that are out there. And as you can see by the hundreds of letters that are after his name, he's been through quite a few certification courses. So he's very, very well versed in all areas of information security. So I'm excited to hear him present on this today. Great information that he has and a lot of great experience around it as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Jerry to go ahead and take it away, Jerry.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Okay, folks. So, the objective of GDPR is really to protect all European Union citizens from the privacy and data breaches that this world has been encountering left and right. You can't listen to the news or pick up the newspaper, for those that still do that, and without seeing a compromise of some sort, right? And at the end of the day, we, the consumers, are the ones that bear the brunt of that, those compromises. And so in response to that, the Parliament has gone through and a long, extensive process and passed this regulation. So although the key principles of data privacy are still the same, a lot's changed since the last time they revised their privacy laws. If you think about it, in our world, here in the United States, there are a number of, not only changing regulations as a result of compromises, but even that, the technology is consistently advancing, and in response to that, the threats are never ending. So it's a changing landscape, to say the least. So what is this GDPR? It stands for the General Data Protection Regulation. Look, again, it's quite similar to the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act in many ways, as well as the state privacy laws that we are subject to here in the United States. The GDPR is a new data privacy regulation formed in the European Union that will integrate data privacy laws across Europe. Essentially, they're looking to standardize and protect European Union consumers, right? So those are the folks that, again, are the subjects that we're looking to protect, just much like we have here in the United States, where citizens of the U.S. and in fact, members of a particular state, for example, if you look at Massachusetts, they've got particular state privacy laws. Mass 201 CMR 17 in particular is their state privacy law, and it's extremely aggressive. It's geared to protect the privacy of the consumers in the state of Massachusetts. If you're an organization in another state or country that serves residents from the state of Massachusetts, you're subject to that law, and those consumers are protected by that law, just like this. So the GDPR, while it's a new data privacy regulation, and it pertains to the folks in the European Union. It protects those citizens, but it also means that it applies to entities that are serving those European Union citizens. Okay, so as we move through that, that's a very clear point that we're going to keep coming back to. It replaces the Data Protection Directive of 1995. It was quite antiquated. Think about in your business the multitude of changes from a technology perspective, the delivery channels that are now available through the technologies that have been ever changing. I mean, these are great business opportunities, but on the other side of the fence, there's always that new risk, right, that it introduces, and it's a constant ongoing challenge for businesses to maintain controls in place to mitigate the risks to the consumers that you serve. So this European Union General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, is the most important change in data privacy regulations in 20 years. And this is, it speaks for itself. I think when you see, again, more as we go through what's entailed there, it's easy to see that any law or regulation for privacy or confidentiality or security that's over 20 years old, it's just not going to hold water. The technology is so dramatically different. Our approaches to serving consumers and even protecting consumer data is worlds different, as is that technology. So the big money, $1 million question, when is the GDPR coming into effect? So the GDPR was approved by the European Union Parliament in April of 2016. And just like here, it's no different in the U.S. When significant legislation goes through, there's a long process that they have to go through to make it a law, to move it in and have it approved as a regulation. There's no difference there in the Parliament. There was a debate going back and forth on a number of items. While at 30,000 feet, we can look at this regulation and say it looks pretty straightforward. But as you'll see, I'm going to introduce some of the things that really make you think twice about, why it wasn't so easily implemented. It's imposing, some significant changes, perhaps expensive changes to these businesses that serve consumers in the European Union. So, for example, if I'm a data processor for a business that perhaps serves folks that are in the European Union, I have to now adhere to these laws. And they include things like allowing the consumer, they have rights, and allows the consumer the opportunity to opt out, to say basically, while we may have been engaged in a contract for multiple years, I am now, as a service provider, I'm bound by this law. And as such, I need to ensure that I am complying with those regulations. There's a significant difference between a processor that doesn't control necessarily what data is being served up to me, and then the real controller of that data. So, for example, if you're a business serving folks in the European Union, and you use ABC company as a hosting provider. Hosting provider doesn't govern what's being put out there per se. The controlling entity does. So it's real important to understand that distinction between the two. So as we move forward with this thing, we got to look at, there's a lot of considerations, and that was just one example of one. But it takes effect basically two years after it was passed in Parliament. That gives the businesses time to ramp up. And as I mentioned, we do the same thing here in the U.S. There's a lot of expense to it, so we transition this and allow organizations time to ramp up. Now, if the European Union is anything like the U.S., there's a good chance that May 2018, when this regulation is implemented, a lot of times we'll see that laws in the United States moving forward that are implemented get delayed. So while it's implemented, they'll give a grace period beyond even this May 2018 date. But right now, that is the date that organizations need to comply with. And again, we'll see if they do pass legislation to delay that further because of the expense. A lot of these businesses often will throw up their arms and, hey, I can't meet that regulation. It's going to sink my business. So there's a lot of things that go back and forth. I think the 2 years is reasonable to give businesses an opportunity to get appropriate controls in place. So who needs to abide by this new regulation? It affects organizations certainly within the European Union, but it also, like I mentioned earlier, it affects organizations outside of the European Union, and that's why Compass is doing this today. We have a number of clients. We do business in almost every state in the United States, but a lot of the businesses that we serve, they are service providers and they serve entities outside the U.S., or they may have business units outside the U.S. So we are often overseas auditing and assessing business partners, third-party providers, or even extensions of the business themselves, just another business unit in other states, other countries. And so we need to stay up on these laws. And for our clients that requested this, we wanted to kind of put this brief presentation together. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we're going to provide answers to questions, but 30 minutes is not a heck of a lot of time, and there's a fair amount of information, and certainly we'll leave you with, I think, very, very good guidance based on experience, but certainly welcome the opportunity to help direct you further down the road if you have questions. So it's going to go in. It'll apply to the companies that process and hold the personal data of subjects that live in the European Union. That's the key. Now, and you always begs the question, well, what happens if we don't meet that deadline? Let's say that May 25th, 2018 is here, and we're all forced to comply. What's the downside if we're not compliant? What punitive actions have they folded into this law, into this regulation? And there are circumstances that will be considered when they administer fines, but essentially those can be up to 2% of the total global annual turnover, or basically 10 million euros, which is significant money, or up to 4% of the total global annual turnover, or 20 million euros. Again, it's quite significant in terms of penalties. But historically, I'll tell you, with regard to United States legislation, laws that are passed that don't have teeth in them often are not followed, right? So you go back to when HIPAA was first passed, the penalties were so minimal. They were $25 a record if you were compromised. We do a lot of work in the healthcare industry, and we sat across many years ago from different healthcare organizations who said basically, you know what you want me to do, while it sounds great and it is the right thing to do, it's going to cost me more money to do what you want than if I am indeed compromised. I'll pay the $25 per record penalty. Now, as a consumer, that should blow your mind. That's a fact. That's the kind of stuff we're up against. But businesses are making decisions, all the time. That's why for laws to really, have teeth in them like this, it really matters a lot. I mean, we're going to see compliance. We've had, again, a number of organizations ping us for this, and there's over 50 people on this call right now that were registered. So, clearly there's interest, and I know folks are gearing up for it. Right now, we don't have a boatload of time between now and the 25th of May, but there are definitely things that need to be done, and those steps, should include. We kind of, you go around and around. What's the best approach? How do I get started? That's always the big thing. Where the heck do I even begin? And honestly, let's start with this. Let's look at who you could partner with. Compass is certainly an organization, that can help, but you may have, other folks that you deal with. That's great. If you feel comfortable with an outside organization that can guide you through GDPR, through to compliance, and you're comfortable with that, excellent. But if you don't, we're one of, many that can do stuff like that. But moving through that, so partnering with somebody that can kind of guide you, that you trust through that compliance, maze to get to where you need to be. The second item here, it really is a big one. A readiness assessment. We do this in all industries, right? We've got folks that say, hey, I need to be PCI compliant. Jeff mentioned earlier when he mentioned the alphabet of letters after my alphabet soup of letters after my name. One of them QSA. I'm a qualified security assessor for the payment card industry. And I tell you what, folks, honestly, going through that maze the first time, it was a nightmare. And so a readiness assessment is often what we recommend for them. It's where we go through. It costs a lot less money. It's a high level assessment. And again, this isn't a sales pitch. If you've got an IT audit firm that you're comfortable with, ask them about that, because it'll give you a quicker look, 30,000 feet, maybe a little deeper, but it won't be as expensive as the full-blown IT audit that comes with really doing this the right way. And it gives you the sense for, these are the items I need to fix. These are the control weaknesses that I need to get my arms around. So my company's name is not on the front page of the paper or on the news. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do these days. It is a changing landscape, as we all know, and all kinds of organizations that have consumer information are targets of all kinds of attacks. So the readiness assessment will go through. They'll assess, or we would assess, your controls and what's in place, what policies and procedures you have in place to kind of ensure that you're protecting, in this case, the European Union individuals that you're serving in this case, right? Whether you're a service provider in the United States or you're abroad and you're a provider there in Europe, in the European Union, you need to comply with the regulation. We'll kind of show you what you need to do. We will provide the risk levels that you may have encountered, or we may have encountered through the assessment, and where you are relative to where you need to be. It's probably the biggest recommendation, other than education, I can provide. So get ready to tackle the GDPR as a business initiative. And really what we mean by that is this. In your business, and I know, again, we're in all industries and all verticals, and we've seen it all kind of, and I'll tell you, the businesses that are most successful are those that take these regulations seriously, right? So as they come out, moving to create a project for this, assigning an owner, really getting the business behind it and supporting it is paramount to your success. So really make an initiative, assign the appropriate owners to the project, and really make it a project, and then move through the steps that I'm outlining here. And I'm sure there's some others we could fold in, but it's a really good, I think, a really good way to get started. Identify them and map your data. The biggest thing in all audit work that we do is scope. It's all about the scope. And the scope really boils down to, what we're assessing or what we're auditing. So what's the focus here? It's that personal data of the consumer in the European Union. That's the focus. So you ask yourself, if I'm a service provider or merchant serving these individuals in the European Union, okay, where's that data? How am I getting it in? Where is it in my systems? And how is it going out? Who has access to it? How am I controlling it? How long do I keep it for? There's a number of control objectives that you need to have controls in place to appropriately minimize and mitigate the risks that unauthorized access to this most important confidential information is maintained. So really know where your data is physically in your environment. So you look at I always say there's two sort of dimensions here, right? One is physical, one is logical. So physically, where would this European Union personal data be, right? So maybe I have, mail that comes in, maybe I've got it, it comes in through US mail or other means through hard copies maybe I printed out records for these consumers, and I've got them in different places. I've got them in a vault there. I've got them stored here. I got, wherever it is, where is it? So physically lay out your facilities and mark those areas, and then move to protect those areas. And then the other dimension is logical, right? So let me look at the network diagrams. Where are the systems? Where does the confidential information on these individuals in the EU? Where are they? Where's it flow? How's it come in? Where is it within my infrastructure? And how does it go out, right? So you look at the full life cycle of that in the physical world and the logical world, and that's your scope. That's your focus. So what steps continued here? We've got a few more of the 8. Creating a plan that exceeds regulatory minimums. And the reason why I say that is this. If you shoot for being more conservative Again, be reasonable with this, but being conservative, it will serve you better than barely making the letter of the law. So that means if the law ratchets down a little bit tighter, you're not compliant. But what if you treat it like it's money? Because at the end of the day, it will cost you significant funds, and it could cost you your entire business if it's not taken properly or not treated properly and taken seriously. So treat it like it's a significant financial dollar amount that we need to protect. We wouldn't leave money out on the counter of our business. We certainly wouldn't knock the firewalls down at our hosting data center. So treat it like it's confidential. It's important. It's the most important data that you have, and it will serve you well. So go a little bit above and beyond. Document your audit work. So whether it's internal, some organizations that are larger and have internal audit groups, excellent. Let's document the controls in place. So start with that scope like I talked about in the physical, logical world. And then let's document how we are protecting the consumer data in all of the areas of the physical layout. And then likewise in all of the logical areas from the life cycle of how that information makes its way into the physical world and the logical world in your business and how it gets out. And then with those controls documented, you need to then move to implement those, which means the documentation of it really is the design of the controls. Those usually take the physical form of policies, but they can be in procedures as well. So policies, procedures, diagrams, checklists, forms, standards. These are the written word where we as auditors are trained to go through and pull out these control statements and really ensure that they're in place and that they map nicely to protect the information. That's part of the world. That's the design of the world. The design of the control. But where the rubber hits the road is really the operating effectiveness. So now I've got some great controls written up, and now let's make sure that my staff has access to these policies. We've trained them on what we expect of them. They've got the procedures in place, the forms, the diagrams, and they now know what we do. So that's the implementation of those design of controls, those policies, procedures, documents. And now as an auditor, when I come in, I'm assessing both of those, right? Do we have the appropriate design? And then the operating effectiveness, our staff's doing it. So I go into some places and I, like I mentioned, I've seen it all. We'll go in and the design of the control looks great. We request evidence. They give me these great policies. They look awesome. They read well. Boy, this, controls, physical access is controlled by, we've got cameras, we've got locks, alarms, we've got a receptionist, old Betty's out there. We got a login book where they log in. We escort people. We have these wonderful badges. They look great. They have our logo on them. We're pretty proud of those, and it reads well, and then I get there as an auditor and the camera's hanging off the wall. Betty's selling Avon down the road. I walk right in. There's the badges. They didn't come out of the printer properly, so we don't use those anymore. And I just kind of help myself through the facility unescorted. So really make sure that design reads well, but we're also doing it, right? So that's a key point. So protect the data at rest and in motion. Look, it's at rest. It's in the physical world where it's those hard copies I talked about in that physical dimension, but also on a server or a system in my network infrastructure in the logical world, when I have personally identifiable information that's confidential, in this case on the EU individuals, that, if it's on a server, on a disk somewhere, it needs to be protected at rest. So encrypted at rest, but also when I'm sending it across internal networks as well as across, of course, the internet. So in the old days, it was enough to say, it's on our internal infrastructure. We can send it in plain text. Not a big deal. That is going by the wayside. There are a lot of internal compromises, and it introduces a lot more risk to the business. And in areas like the PCI data security standard, they've ratcheted that down, and we no longer, as auditors, applying audited judgment, will accept that. It presents too much risk unless they've got a myriad of controls that mitigate those risks, but it's not the best practice. Then the last item is implementing the process automation. Implement process automation. This just means basically let's make this thing repeatable, right? Whatever we put in place, let's make sure it's as automated as possible. Remove human intervention, and it will serve you well. It minimizes the opportunity for error. So if you look at like the ongoing, again, taking this treating it like an ongoing process is going to serve you well. It's not a one and done, folks. The measures, an organization takes have to be repeatable and ongoing. It's not a one and done. We're not going to just get this done to keep the auditors quiet until next year. You know from reading the newspapers, again, in articles online and just the news on television, that these threats, these attacks are never ending. They're persistent. They are changing all the time. They do better than businesses often in terms of adjusting their approach to meet the new challenges of the changing landscape of the world. And they're constantly come at it, and they're very creative. So you need to be as creative to mitigate those risks. Education, I'll tell you this, when I go in and I teach folks on whether it's social engineering or part of our security awareness program that we do, I'll tell you, I can't stress enough, the weakest link in an organization is the people. The strongest facet and protection of your business is the people. So it really is. I can have you go out and after hearing some really, if I give you case studies on some social engineering or recent ransomware attacks, it will blow your mind. I do this and I've done this for 30 years. It blows my mind. It's fascinating, it's exciting, and it's scary at the same time. But understand, you can go out from from the education right from there and buy the best firewalls, have great monitoring, and do all the wonderful things, and if you're but if you're entrusting those systems to be managed by people that aren't taking it as seriously as you, that aren't as educated as they need to be in terms of taking the steps to mitigate the risks, look into what happened at Equifax, and it'll blow your mind. Some basic IT steps that have been around forever in terms of changing, generic passwords that come in on perimeter devices and a lot of different standard things. These practices like patching systems, these are 101 for anybody in the IT world. These were not followed in organizations. It's still happening every day. So the people are, again, that can be your strongest link if you properly educate them, and don't just educate them once upon hire. Educate them annually, but not just once annually, ongoing throughout. Hey folks, here's a new risk that's been in the news, and it's in these industries, but you can see where it might apply to your business. These are the things. Keep them updated on changes to your infrastructure that apply to them, perhaps changes that might, risks that hit a business, in an area or an industry that you're in, so they're aware, hey, I need to be more cognizant of this particular risk because it applies to the business that we are in. So be smart about it, but train the heck out of your staff. You want to go short on dollars? Don't do it in this area. Implement ongoing monitoring to ensure continuous compliance to GDPR. That's a good one as well. That's where we talked about in the previous slide, kind of implementing sort of automation, right? So a lot of businesses have IDS, IPS, these intrusion detection and protection systems. These are great. These are monitor attacks all the time, but also ongoing vulnerability assessing externally and internally. People monitor network activity, ensuring that anytime a new IP device is introduced, that we're notified. We there's a lot of things ongoing, like wireless rogue walkthroughs and appliances that can constantly be, notifying the IT staff of any kind of activity that's not normal. This is huge. And then finally, having periodic independent assessments and audits performed. Know where your weaknesses are before they're exploited. And you can do it yourself initially. Let's take the first pass at it, or maybe you plug in an organization. Like I mentioned in the first step of the 8 steps, partnering with an organization that knows what they're doing can get you on the road to compliance for GDPR. But then you take the reins. And economically, you can run with it, right? Yourself. Make sure you're doing the things that you were trained by this organization to do. And then every now and then, maybe every other year or every third year, whatever your budget permits and whatever your, again, your appetite for risk is. But have an independent party. Come on back in. Let's check us out again. We've been doing it ourselves now for a couple of years. Want you back in here. Let's see how we've been doing. There's been more risks, more threats, changing technology. Let's have that spot check. Let's have them come in and do sort of that readiness again, maybe, or maybe a full-blown audit, just to test the controls. And then we're down to our resources that we utilize for, as our time is running out. What do we got? Oh, we're right on 2:30. Hey, Jeff, I'm getting better at this. I'm going to pat myself on the back. We're at 2:30. These are the resources. I really want to thank folks for your time today. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to throw a couple questions that people may have posted.
Yeah, Jerry, great job. Thanks for going over this. I know this is probably something we could devote several hours to, so great overview of what the requirement is and what the changes are. So we do have a couple quick questions here that I'd like to run through with you if that's possible. And I know we're right on
Sure.
the time here. We try and keep these, folks, just to kind of give you a heads up, we try and keep these to 30 minutes so that way it's not something um, that was overwhelming or takes a ton of your time. We understand it's important, but we want to keep these, quick hits, high level views, educational in nature. So, one of the questions that we got that came from one of our participants is, what entity will enforce GDPR? And this is probably the best part of the question: do you anticipate that this will really occur in terms of the enforcement? Um, I don't know if you can speak to
Yeah.
that, Jerry. It's
So
kind of like a crystal ball, but
yeah, no. So a couple parts to that question. So, the first part, European Parliament, the European Union Parliament that passed the regs are the ones that are putting the funds and dollars behind those penalties that I shared on a few slides back. So they're going to be the enforcing parties. In the United States, a lot of times, where, so for us, for the regulations, a lot of times it's our Attorney General's office, and the equivalent in the European, there's 28, I believe, European Union states yeah, I guess they consider them states over there. So those entities are each going to be governing, but overall, it's a European. The European Parliament is the one who passed the regulation, and dollars are put in for the enforcement. That is still evolving, so I don't have a clear answer on that. But I will say this: as I mentioned, look, the May 25th, 2018 date is coming. It's coming fast. While I believe there's an opportunity it might get pushed because, I know here in the US that happens quite frequently. I would not bank my business on that. I would move to show diligence. And even if I come up a little bit short in terms of, hey, this is what I got done. I had a readiness. Here are my gaps. I have it. I've got it to a project plan. These will be remediated by, August or September. That shows diligence and you're moving in the right direction. Penalties typically, as you saw from that slide, it said there's a lot of considerations before penalties are levied. So it'll go through a committee, a review, and then they'll assess those penalties. I would be wary about, look, also it's huge. They got a lot of money and clout behind this. The point is, making an example of an organization that may be the first, the first one may be the example, and you don't want to be that first business. Any other ones, Jeff?
yeah, we do have a couple of other quick questions here. And I'll actually throw this one out to you, Jerry, in terms of seeing, I don't know the answer to this question, but do you know of any training programs here in the United States for GDPR and DPO? They seem to be available overseas, of course, but there's nothing that seems to be available formally here. Do you know of any off the top of your head? I don't, but I didn't know if you might.
Yeah, no, I don't. And I'll tell you, I did a lot of research before this. We had clients, as I mentioned, this impacts, and we're working with some of them now. And there's literally in the United States, there are a number of IT audit and security firms like Compass doing this for other organizations that is preparing them for compliance for this regulation. There's no other than the site. So look at the site I listed here on the slide right now, the www.eugdpr.org. Great resource. That was one of them. I actually 7 or 8 more, but these are the two I think were pretty decent. Take a look at those. And again, a lot of this is evolving still in terms of the way they're going to move to enforce the regulations. So my best advice is align with that IT auditor security firm that you've worked with before, that you feel comfortable with. I hope it's Compass. If it's not, hey, whoever you got that's been serving you well, get with them. And if they've got some insight to this, move forward with that and at least start the process.
Awesome, good stuff. We'll go with one last one here, and this is a question I'm actually looking forward to your answer because this seems to be one that changes, at least here in the U.S. It changes all the time depending on the state. But what constitutes personal data?
Yeah, and so that has changed in the U.S. Initially, personal data, we were talking about information that's not readily publicly available through other means like the internet and things of that nature. And I always have to preface that with legally available. But it's evolved even into, in some states they have it's gone to court, and information like if I had my name and address I don't have it. I don't know if people even have phone books anymore, but mine was, if I had it restricted, the point is if my name and address got out, I can actually, in this particular case I'm referring to, they did win in court. So that they consider that personal data. So basically for this European Union regulation, for GDPR, any information related to a natural person or data subject that can be used to directly or indirectly identify the person. So I'm reading from some of the research I had done earlier. This is their definition. It can be anything from a name, a photo. Now, who thought about that, right? A photo other than a photo that may have had, your driver's license, but a photo even, an email address, bank details, posts on social networking websites, medical information, or computer IP address. So I mean, this really expands a lot of it. We've also on some of this stuff, in Europe, honestly, well, as good as we think some of our laws and regulations are protecting privacy and confidentiality, in the UK there are some very, very, more critical regs on privacy, to the point where maintaining cookies for software is prohibited unless it's required for the particular application to function. In here in the United States, it's a little more loosey-goosey on stuff like that. So they really move forward and take a lead on some of this stuff before even the United States does, which is interesting.
That is interesting. It's photos. That's an interesting one for sure. I don't know if I've heard that one before, but it's definitely the way the world is changing. Any other questions that we have? If anybody has anything last second, go ahead and throw it into the chat box here. I think it looks like those are all the questions that we have. So, Jerry, I'll take a quick moment to say thank you for spending some time to review this and understand more about this, and also, of course, presenting it to the group here today. I know it's something that has gotten a lot of attention out there, and appreciate you taking the time and did a great job. I think you did an excellent job of giving everyone a great overview. For the folks on the line, I wanted to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to go ahead and attend our webinar and learn a little bit more about this regulation. I will, again, just to kind of recap what I said in the beginning, we will be sending the presentation out as well as a recording of the webinar to everyone who registered. So look for that coming either later today or tomorrow at the absolute latest. But I appreciate everybody taking the time. Jerry, thank you for taking the time out of your day, and be sure to join us next month. We're going to be doing a fun little theme here at Compass for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and it's going to be around the fact that cybersecurity doesn't have to be scary, just your Halloween costume does. So look for details on that coming up. I'll be posted to our site by the end of the week. As to when that is, it'll be towards the end of October, but thank you everybody for your time today. Appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you in October. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Jerry.